I won't hit my dog. I don't hit anybody.
I got slapped in the face, by the way.
Who hit you in the face?
Khalyla.
Like
backhanded my face.
Hard?
I have a new girl, guys. Can I tell you about her?
Please.
Yeah,
Please, Bobby.
Okay, I met her on Tinder, and she's half Filipino. The third night we went out, and she goes, I'm violent. She goes, I'm violent.
Wow.
I go, what does that mean? And she goes, and she didn't say anything. And then we made out some more, and she goes, I hate you. And she punched me in the face.
She really punched you in the face.
As hard as she could.
I was a huge cutter from the age of 15 through 19. And one of the reasons why I have the tattoo on my forearm is to cover the scars. This big black blob is there because at 17, I lost a bet to a guy I had a crush on. And I tattooed his name on my wrist. Again, in Las Vegas. Poor life choices. And I had to tattoo over it 4 times.
I have real feelings for this girl, guys.
Okay.
But the violence is awful.
Sounds like how you're talking about her.
Why violent? Is she crazy or she was molested?
Molested when I was 8 years old. I felt sudden, like an urge, like a sexual urge to do the same to either a pet, a doll, or a real person or a real child. And you know what? I hate to say it now, but like I took another cousin of mine. I was 8 and she was 6. And you know what I mean? It's like there were things that I would probably did that were highly inappropriate for an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
Because it was being done to me. I would collect like my dogs had ticks, and when the ticks would suck up so much blood, it'll be all fat. So I'd get a magnifying glass and then put the tick under it until have the sun like sear through its skin until it would pop. So that tick would burst from.
What?
Whoa.
So like with magnifying glass, like if the sun hits a magnifying.
It got so dark. It got so dark.
We don't have babies, but we've killed 2.
Wait, really?
Yeah, Khalyla I've been asking her for fucking 12 hours a day, every day. It's like I've been asking, I go, can we have a baby? And she's like, not with you. We have 7 animals. We live together. Her niece lives with us. We're a family.
I would have fucking turkey basted myself with his fucking sperm, which I would have secretly.
So that really is,
Yes.
that's hurtful because we killed 2 babies.
I am not the one who asked for an open relationship. And that's a fucking fact. The truth of that is I intercepted something alluding to Bobby and another woman in Hawaii. That is even how the conversation ended up to having an open relationship. I didn't instigate it. I didn't start it. I didn't cheat. Bobby can corroborate this story.
Because I never did anything like that in the 10 years. You know, I never looked at another girl.
Yeah.
Really, I was very like kind of loyal to her. You know what I mean?
There's no flirtatiousness.
I never did any of that. I never hung out with girls. Really, no, I never did any of that.
Yeah, so I got my bachelor's in nursing from Cal State Long Beach.
Yeah.
And then when I met Bobby, he was like, are you sure you want to do that? And I'm like, are you trying to derail my life? Because my mom's about to stab you. Trying to tell her daughter not to become a nurse. I did nursing last minute because we were coming up on like financial hardships. So I was like, okay, let me just be quick with the nursing, get my nursing degree, get a job. Got the job.
I can't help but feel like if this is the nurses episode, perhaps the real nurse should take it away.
I'm not a real nurse, you guys.
Oh, we were talking about Donut.
And I went to a Division I school. I got a full ride to UNLV to
And
swim.
what sport was it?
Swimming.
It's the best thing.
Yeah.
Is like them.
Orphan's still a dream of mine.
Yeah, it would be cool.
It's like every girl's dream.
To marry an orphan or be one?
Yeah, because then they just become like a male anglerfish. You almost just eventually you just bring them into your world so much because they don't have their own world that they just become an appendage. And then you fuse together.
That's really
but
romantic.
As a woman,
Awesome.
as a female anglerfish, you stay big and bright and you have the bulb over your head and he's just a little appendage on the
they
side.
need you.
And they need you so much.
Dude, you and your fish analogies are so
But that's just my dream.
I've met conniving people in real life, and the reason conniving people usually can go on for so long without anybody thinking they're conniving is because we as people just assume nobody is actually like a villain from TV. We just assume because most likely the people we've met in our life have all been kind of normal, or at least they're not so crazy that they're villains. I don't think Bobby is a true villain. I think he is a liar and a really messed up dude. Khalyla, on the other hand, is a villain.
All right, you guys kept asking, so I finally made a follow-up. I understand why there's so much interest in this. Even with all the other insane drama to come out of the LA comedy scene, nothing even comes close to this Bobby Lee and Khalyla situation. It combines every aspect from every major controversy. From the alleged sexual assaults of D'Elia and Callan, to the terrible response to criticism of Shab.
As a matter of fact, I'll give you, any TigerBelly listener, $2,000 of my own money if you find the IP address of this person. When I put out the whole, like, you know, help me find who this guy is, most of the people were like, I don't want the money, but here's the guy who did it. So they gave me his information.
And it goes far beyond that into something straight out of a novel. If you haven't seen my last video, which I recommend you watch before this, even though I'll do my best to catch you up to speed, I was able to do some sleuthing.
I'm an undercover sleuth. I am.
Are you really?
Right.
And unveiled some of Khalyla's old poems from a deleted website she used to blog on. And nearly everybody agreed that it sounded like something a serial killer would have written.
This is what you find just before you dig bodies out of a crawl space.
I have goosebumps. That is the darkest poem I've ever heard.
I initially didn't even release the most disturbing of these entries out of respect for her privacy. I foolishly assumed that given the severity of the subject matter, she wouldn't want these stories to continue circulating at her current level of exposure. Contrary to what any normal person would do, she has continued to talk about every single thing written on that site. From the extremely vivid and graphic descriptions of childhood abuse, to what can reasonably be interpreted as premeditated baby murder. And I'm only kind of joking. Everything that any sane person would have long since stopped referencing has continued to be spoken about on a regular basis. So I'm no longer experiencing any sort of moral dilemma surrounding the release of these poems. I'll be going over most of them in this video, but for anyone who's interested in digging deeper on their own, I'll be posting full screenshot archives of her website in the description. I'm also going to be going into some of the fan theories surrounding this strange relationship, from the supposed blackmail she has over Bobby.
He can never betray me.
She
He
knows
can
things
never.
about me. She knows things about me, right? That no one knows. So she has me by the fucking testicles, right? So, and it's like, you know, I allowed that to happen because I love her so much. But she has, you know what I mean? She has the information. And I'm fucked.
To her alleged attempt to achieve conservatorship over his assets and estate. With that, we'll also be going into some of the more unsettling instances in Bobby's past.
And I went by myself one night, and there was all this military in Adelita, so there was no girls walking around. So I went in the back of Adelita, which is this alleyway called Hooker Alley.
Oh.
And we don't know how old they are. And they really don't know how old. So they're judging me.
No.
And I was also 23.
Sure.
So I walked down Hooker Alley, and the girl at the end of this alley looked like Natalie Portman. You know,
okay.
but from The Professional.
Yes, I
From The
understand.
Professional. Not from Star Wars.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, like The Professional, you know what I mean? I take her to this place called Miami Hotel. I make love to her, right?
Boy.
The moon through the curtains shine on her face. She
you wear a
she was
condom?
crying.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And she had
my
snot bubbles.
God.
She had snot bubbles, and she was crying, right?
Holy
and I felt so
shit.
bad that I
Of course you
power
should.
fucked her afterwards.
Wow.
So I can get it over with.
There seems to be endless content here, but this is probably going to be my last video on the subject. If you have any recommendations for people or situations that I should look into, please let me know down in the comments. Nowhere is a better place to start than with baby murder.
You know what, though? He got me pregnant off of pre-cum.
Pre-com.
Whoa.
Yeah.
At the very end of my last video, I went over a poem titled Milk, where Khalyla talks about how she once...
Do you know what I fantasize
And that's
about?
nothing with my fantasies go crazy.
Being cummed into by 10 men.
I left out the last few lines where she talks about how the living out of these fantasies has resulted in abortions which she now regrets. I chose to not include this because I thought that she felt genuine remorse, and assumed that she had since kept this private as a result. I was rushing to release the video after I came across her website, and I didn't have time to fully immerse myself in the lore. And it turns out that she openly brags about killing Bobby's children.
We don't have babies, but we've killed 2.
Not only that, but also intentionally allowing herself to get pregnant, knowing that she would later have to get an abortion. If you think I'm exaggerating, let's look at her own words. You were simply a carton of milk I thirsted for in 2 places of my body that so fervently welcomed you in. I was a fool for drinking you in, recklessly, expectantly, knowing I could only keep the second heartbeat in utero for 7 weeks. I still cry over spilled milk. I wonder what stage of development a fetus is at around 7 weeks. Oh no, that's not good. So she admits to knowing that she would be getting this abortion as she was expectantly drinking him in. Now, the least charitable interpretation of this possible is that she intentionally waited until the baby was at least semi-conscious and had functional pain receptors to brutally end its life, which for any other person on the planet would be an obvious bit of comedic exaggeration. But we're not talking about a normal person. We're talking about an incestuous...
Because I was fucking my brother at a hospital.
Dog molesting.
I used to jerk off dogs a lot.
Insect torturing.
Like sear through its skin until it would pop, so that tick would burst.
Pathological liar who described in vivid detail for years how much pleasure she takes in inflicting pain upon vulnerable people. And for the few Khalyla defenders from the last video, these poems are not some form of abstract creative expression. They reference verifiable instances from her personal life, which she continues to talk about to this day, and some are just straightforward letters to Bobby. There were surprisingly few white knights, but the little there were kept making this same argument. Anyone who can see all of this together and still walk away defending her is just willfully deluding themselves. I'm not saying for certain that she intentionally waited for the abortion to be painful. I'm just pointing out how absurd it is that we genuinely can't rule that out. Even giving her the benefit of the doubt, she still admits to recklessly allowing herself to get pregnant, knowing that she would have to get an abortion. And if she knew right away, as she clearly states in the poem, why wait 7 weeks? Why not just take the morning after pill and get it over with? Most likely just carelessness, but it could legitimately be the far more sinister option. I actually was joking when I initially brought it up, but the more I think about it, the more it seems like a real possibility. This is a horrible thing to put on somebody, obviously, but she already admits to straight up murdering them. This wasn't a failure of birth control. A condom didn't break. She got pregnant knowing she would have to kill it. And these are the very words she uses to describe the act.
We've killed 2.
Another interesting angle to this is that Bobby claims to have gotten Khalyla pregnant with pre-cum.
How do you know he got you pregnant off the pre-cum?
Because we went back over like the time of conception or whatever.
Yet in this very poem, which was published April 30th, 2014, long after Bobby and Khalyla had gotten together, she describes the encounter which ultimately led to this abortion with the words recklessly drinking you in, which doesn't match up with the pre-cum description that Bobby gave us. She could have been referencing a prior abortion, but I've only been able to find clips of her talking about killing Bobby's children. And if you contrast the extreme lust present in this poem with how she describes her and Bobby's sex life in every other instance, it seems less and less likely that this was Bobby's kid to begin with. Given her propensity for sleeping around within relationships, I don't even think this is a minor stretch. Next, we're going to get into the root of all of her pathologies, which is the physical and sexual abuse she suffered as a child.
She beat me endlessly and brutally growing up, like internment style.
She goes into great detail about this trauma in her poem from June 5th, 2014, titled Shampoo Bottle. This really outlines the beginning of her sociopathic association of love with abuse. I asked my mama why she punched me in the mouth. She said I had broken the lid of the shampoo bottle. She had paid top peso for my braces, so I didn't understand the Sugar Ray Leonard strike to the OS. Yet, I don't even recall the slightest throb from the bottom lip she had split open. The air was so thick with her own sadness that all I could feel and hear was my mama's heart crippling. I don't know who her tears were for, if they were for my father or another man. At 10, I understood so little. All I knew is that she sounded so beautiful when she cried. Who cares if she made me look like a freshly fed Dracula? There was more truth in her disquietude, more love in her discord than her usual display of sensible parenting. To me, the melody of her unraveling composure made up for the largely disproportionate crime-to-punishment ratio of the shampoo bottle incident. That evening, as my sister helped me pluck out each metal wire that Mama's furious fist had embedded into my gum line, I remember thinking, I want that someday. That punch your own daughter in the mouth for no good reason kind of love. That must be the best kind of love. Taking this into consideration, along with her sexual abuse, it's no wonder she turned out to be such a sadistic psycho. I'm not trying to excuse her actions. I'm sure everyone knows at least one person who suffered something almost identical to what Khalyla has, and they aren't running around victimizing others to pass off their trauma. However, it does make her a more sympathetic character than if she had just grown up normally. But if you consider the fact that she lied about her self-harm, it's not out of the question that some of her abuse could have been exaggerated or outright fabricated. In the clip from the intro where Khalyla talks about her childhood sexual abuse, She admits to doing inappropriate things with her younger relatives because they were being done to her.
I took another cousin of mine. I was 8 and she was 6. And you know what I mean? It's like there were things that I would probably did that were highly inappropriate for an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
Because it was being done to me.
She also mentions how she had the urge to perform these acts on her pets.
I felt sudden, like an urge, like a sexual urge to do the same to either a pet.
Yet when Khalyla speaks on her puppy love later down the line, she says that it was taught to her by a relative.
So I jerked off Rolly to completion.
How did you know at 8 what that was?
So my older cousin had done it before me, and he was like, I think that he was doing it for some sick sexual reason,
Yes, he was.
This is one inconsistency in a sea of others that make you doubt the validity of all of her claims. Like the previously mentioned lie from the intro, where Khalyla alters the story about her tattoo's origin. What was originally a cover-up of an ex-boyfriend's name morphed into a much more sympathetic story about her past self-harm, which makes you wonder if she was ever a cutter to begin with, or if she's just planting this seed to give herself an excuse for her behavior, should her true nature ever be revealed. It also makes you question the claims of childhood abuse. If she's willing to lie about past trauma for sympathy points, what makes these stories any different? I find it hard to believe that Khalyla would make up a childhood molestation story and include the fact that she did inappropriate things with a younger relative and animal. Although, she could just be a pathological liar who got caught up in the moment and later decided to try and rewrite history. There's also a much darker third option, which I won't even speculate on because of the seriousness of the matter at hand, yet I don't fault anyone else for doing so. I think that she was most likely abused in all of the ways in which she describes, yet she obviously still feels the need to lie in order to garner further pity, so it's also pretty likely that she's making up some of it. I am applying a lot of manipulative intent to Khalyla's behavior, instead of interpreting it as the malignant outburst of a broken person. As we went over last time, she has candidly outlined her method of preying on the weak, and repeatedly describes what sadistic pleasure she takes in quote-unquote breaking them. As many of you pointed out in the comments of my last video, she really thinks highly of her own intellect, even saying on Twitter years ago that she was a literal genius that has an IQ of 146.
What's my IQ?
147.
Yeah, confirmed.
Okay. Your mom should not know your IQ. Look at that. Confirmed. Oh, yeah?
In spite of the fact that she's a quantifiable genius, her writings are littered with basic grammatical errors. In the very same poem as this, she says, I felt the salty surge from my lacrimal ducts lay heavy tracks onto my reddened cheeks. She awkwardly crams in this totally out of place word to try and signal to everybody how smart she is. Not to mention, she also went to a community college and lied about it. But we'll be getting into that a little bit later. If she isn't lying about this IQ test, she definitely just took one online and is delusional enough to accept it at face value. All of this has to be taken into account when analyzing her behavior. She isn't some mentally ill woman lashing out in ways that just so happen to harm others. She considers herself a conniving genius who admits to deliberately inflicting pain upon others because she enjoys watching them suffer. I honestly don't understand how anyone can continue to defend her. A lot of it is probably the result of Bobby's continued support for Khalyla, which some people speculate may be the result of blackmail.
She has the information, and I'm fucked.
They cite Bobby's admission to what can easily be interpreted as the sexual assault of a minor during an appearance on Opie and Anthony with Ron Biddington.
Did you wear a condom? She was crying. Oh no.
Oh,
And she had
my
snot bubbles.
God.
She had snot bubbles.
Arguing that if this is what he's willing to admit to publicly, we can't even imagine what he must keep private. Think about all of the things he could have possibly divulged to Khalyla throughout the time in which he confided in her. Not even to mention the fact that he said this himself verbatim. This next one is pure fan speculation, but it seems equally as plausible. This one centers around Bobby's time spent supposedly in rehab, although, as we covered in the last video, leaked text from Bobby's brother call into question whether or not he went to a rehab center at all. His brother claims that Khalyla arranged for Bobby to be admitted to a psych ward, presenting it as a standard rehab facility. Bobby's account of the events seemed to match up with his brother's portrayal as well.
They take your phone and you have nothing.
He called me from the payphone and he was just slurring so bad.
They're giving me 12 pills. I don't know what the fuck is in this thing. They had me in this room next to a man who was 65. I don't know how old he was. Half naked. And literally, like, we're as close as me and Khalyla is now.
Crazy.
And he's going like this. Every minute. So what I do is I grab all my shit and I go straight to the lobby. The lobby was when I got real scared because this is what I see. I can only do it.
Yeah.
I can only do it. So I see a guy and he looks like not Jack Nicholson, but Jack Nicholson from The Shining. And I have to, and he's like just pacing all over the place, right? He's freaking me out, dude.
He could have just been sent to a lockdown rehab facility where they whacked him out on benzos, but even if this is the case, Khalyla was the one who convinced him to go to a different rehab center. She was also the one with the power of attorney to get him out, but still had to read up on the place after he was already calling her, begging to get out. This was only after he was able to finally reach her. He makes passing mention of the fact that they were having trouble getting a hold of her.
No one would let me go. They were like, no, you know what I mean? We have to talk this and that. We can't get a hold of this. And this is days that go on. I can't get out. And I had to eventually tell Abby, I go, threaten law. So do the Jew thing.
Some believe that this is because she took the time to go to Hawaii. I haven't been able to find any hard evidence of this, but it would explain why it was so difficult to contact her. Others believe that they couldn't get in touch with her because she was using this time to try and gain conservatorship over Bobby's assets. Conservatorship is when a person is appointed by a court to manage the financial assets of an individual. This happens when that person is deemed unable to perform those duties on their own. In California, you don't even have to be related to someone to file a petition of conservatorship. It generally takes 45 days from the date of filing for the hearing to take place, and 30 days is the minimum recommended time for a rehab stay. It is chronologically feasible that she could have made an attempt at this, but there's no evidence for it whatsoever. The source of this speculation is questionable as well, as it comes solely from random internet comments claiming to be insiders. At least, this is as far as I'm aware. The only sort of mildly convincing conjecture surrounding this links it with the shop confrontation from the beginning of my last video.
The information I got, that open relationship, it's not like anybody did a crime. That's not really breaking news. I can't hold that over your head. The other information you gave me is the bad one.
When he says that he wasn't threatening Khalyla with the cheating, because that wasn't a quote-unquote crime that he could hold over her head, he says that it was the other thing that he was referring to, the actual crime in which she told him the truth about.
We talked about it, yeah. You and I had spoke about this, and you told me the truth.
Yes.
People believe that he's referring to financial crimes, irrespective of this conservatorship idea, although who knows what it could be with her. I also found that Khalyla is listed as principal for the TigerBelly LLC. If you're unaware, a principal generally has financial decision-making powers over a company. All of this compounded with her gold-digging admission, it's no wonder why people are connecting these dots. It's all incredibly conspiratorial, but it's entertaining to break down nonetheless. The last thing I'll get into is her never-ending lies, from her self-harm to the origin of her bestiality, even her claims of Division I swimming. She purports to have swam D1 for the University of Las Vegas, but I wasn't able to find any proof of this online. I was, however, able to find dozens of documents proving that her sister swam here, but nothing on Khalyla herself. There are records of her swimming competitively online, just not collegiately. These records show that she wasn't even coming in first place on a consistent basis, but her sister was, who we know for sure went on to swim D1. Taking this into account, she's probably lying about her swimming prowess, taking on her sister's accomplishments as her own. She also lies about having been a nurse. She at one point claimed to have gotten the job.
So I was like, okay, let me just be quick with the nursing, get my nursing degree, get a job. Got the job.
And gave out medical advice as if she had any idea what she was talking about whatsoever. She now claims that she never actually became a nurse, but that she just went to school for it.
I'm not a real nurse, you guys.
Oh, we were talking about Donut.
She also lies about what school she attended. She claims to have gone to California State Long Beach.
Yeah, so I got my bachelor's in nursing from Cal State Long Beach. Yeah.
When this Facebook page clearly proves that she went to LBBC. LBBC is Long Beach City College. If you're unfamiliar, a city college is another word for a community college. I looked up the acceptance rate for LBBC. It's 100%. The national average for community colleges is 78%. So not only did this so-called genius go to a community college, she went to a particularly bad community college. No wonder she lies about this. She makes several other wild claims, such as a relation to Brian Kuhn de Perroque, the quote-unquote original Tomb Raider. This guy went on a series of expeditions during the late 20s and early 30s in pursuit of ancient legends, and claims to have found evidence of Atlantis in northern Africa. He also asserts that he found the true location of the fabled biblical land of Ophir, as well as the ruins of the temple in which Alexander the Great became a god. Kuhn was expelled from the Royal Geographic Society for having a vivid imagination and being given to gross exaggeration. The more I look into this, the more I think she may be telling the truth about this one.
In these temple ruins we found urns, at first just a few, and then we dug further. There were hundreds, yes thousands of them, each containing the bones and ashes of a child that had been sacrificed to these gods. In time of famine or war, the parents were forced to sacrifice their most precious possessions, so we find in many of these carefully sealed urns marvelous jewels and other riches, plus the bones of their firstborn. In 3 years' work, here we uncovered 18,000 of these horror relics.
We don't have babies, but we've killed 2.
I said I was going to cover all of her poems in this video, but so many of them are just boring, pretentious garbage, especially when compared to the rest of the video. Like this one where she just complains about her dad making her eat the heads of shrimp because she's Asian. Some of these are still pretty interesting though, like the poem Hands On, which really gives us insight into her self-perception. Saying in far too many words, you could have chosen a normal girl, but instead, you've chosen a quote-unquote ink-stained yo-yo who pickles her mood with whiskey, neat, who loves dirty little things, dirty little dark things, who will reveal everything and nothing. I'm sure it's the first time you've heard that one. Who will heighten your most stale of Mondays, who will make you cry like a real man should, but who will love you in a seemingly dangerous fashion. She really does view herself as some special genius. Around the same time as she announced to the world that she had an IQ of 146, she also brags about having worked in a laboratory. It turns out that this lab was located at a community college. You know, the standard home of geniuses. I'm going to scroll through the rest of her poems as I summarize the situation. Khalyla is most likely the victim of some pretty serious abuse, which obviously doesn't excuse her actions, but does explain them. They may not be as sinister as the most extreme of fan theories suggest, but it's bad enough just taking into consideration what she's admitted to herself. Bobby is also an extremely messed up guy, who may actually deserve everything he suffered. Since we only have one piece of evidence in the Bobby situation, it's not as clear-cut as with Khalyla, but it certainly does not look good from the rendition we have. This is most likely going to be my last video on TigerBelly, at least for a while. Please subscribe if you enjoyed. Thank you for watching.